Ever stopped, looked around, and wondered who actually owns the world around you? I mean, who is literally pulling the strings of corporate America? It's a pretty provocative question, right? Because the invisible forces running our daily lives, well, they're almost never the people or the brands whose names are actually on the buildings. Think about it. When you walk into a hospital or check into a hotel, maybe buy your pet food, get your car repaired, or even sit in the dentist chair, you probably assume you're dealing with independent operators or at least traditional companies. But actually, there's a remarkably high chance that these everyday services are completely controlled by giant institutional investors and private equity firms operating entirely behind the scenes. They rarely advertise, and honestly, most of us will never even meet the people running them. So let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover how the twin empires of private equity and big consulting have quietly reshaped our entire economy. For decades, they've operated as these completely untouchable corporate titans, extracting just immense amounts of wealth. But as you'll see, the traditional mechanics are starting to break down, and these massive empires, they are facing a brutal structural reality check. Part 1. The invisible corporate empires. To really understand what's happening right now, we first have to look at the sheer scale of market consolidation across these sectors. And this is absolutely mind-blowing. Out of the 500 biggest corporations in America, an astonishing 498 use just 4 auditing firms, the Big Four. That is a 99.6% market share. When an industry consolidates to that extreme of a level, it completely stops being a competitive market. It becomes a massive, inescapable bottleneck for the entire Western world. Just think about the sheer scale of that entrenchment for a second. Deloitte, for example, has audited Canada's largest telecommunications company for 144 years. 144 years. This extreme lack of competition leads to a business world built purely on reputation. I mean, if you're a corporate executive, you're definitely not going to take a risk on a new, unknown challenger firm, right? You go with the giant that everyone else uses because it's safe. But as we're about to uncover, that safety, it might just be a total illusion. Section 2. Multi-billion-dollar tricks. So how do these invisible owners and untouchable consultants actually make their money? Well, let's look at 2007. One of America's biggest retail chains was bought out in a highly celebrated deal worth over $45 billion. Wall Street absolutely cheered, and the architects of the deal were hailed as financial geniuses. But here's the kicker. By the time the company faced bankruptcy and massive store closures just a few years later, those deal architects had already walked away with hundreds of millions in payouts. And the crazy part? It wasn't fraud. That was literally the intended business model. Here's how this private equity magic trick actually works. It's called a leveraged buyout. Basically, think of it like buying a $1 million house with a massive mortgage. But instead of you paying the mortgage, you make the house itself pay it off. Private equity firms buy companies using just a tiny fraction of their own cash, and they finance the rest with massive debt. Crucially, they load that debt directly onto the acquired company's balance sheet. So the business has to service the loan, while the private equity firm just prepares to sell it for a massive profit. And if the target company collapses under all that debt, well, everyday workers lose their jobs and bear the brunt of it, while the investors often walk away totally shielded. Now, shift gears and look at this massive conflict of interest with the Big Four auditing firms. In 2023, they made $95 billion from advisory and consulting, compared to just $66 billion from auditing. Do you see the problem here? They are financially incentivized to use their highly trusted auditing access to turn around and sell even more lucrative, super expensive consulting services to the exact same companies. It's essentially paying someone to mark their own homework. And what are these companies even getting for these astronomical advisory fees? Well, take a look at this actual 2016 excerpt from McKinsey. Develop value-creating partnerships, build a clear mission, develop strategies to create sustainable related opportunities. I mean, come on, it is an absolute word salad, but it commands an insane premium purely because of the prestigious brand name attached to it. Part 3. Cracks in the foundation. For decades, cheap money and unchallenged prestige kept these empires perfectly afloat. But as the macro environment shifts, this whole emperor has no clothes reality is finally being exposed, and quality control is facing severe scrutiny. Get this, in 2022, regulators found that a staggering 43% of audits conducted by EY had a deficiency. 43%. That means for almost half of these highly prestigious, incredibly expensive audits, the firm didn't even gather enough basic evidence to actually support the financial opinions they were signing off on. It is definitely not an isolated incident. The average deficiency rate across all Big Four firms more than doubled in just 2 years, jumping from 12% in 2020 to 26% in 2022. The quality is rapidly, visibly deteriorating across the board. And the reason? It's simple. These monopolies just felt entirely too safe from competition for far too long. Oh, and it gets even worse on the consulting side. Recently, the Australian government paid Deloitte $290,000 for advice on a welfare system issue. And the result? The report was completely full of work done by AI. We're talking completely fake quotes, a fake court hearing, and citations to academic work that literally did not exist. So these astronomical fees are now frequently paying for dangerously subpar automated grunt work. Now, this structural rot has actually been building for decades. You can trace it back to Arthur Andersen's total collapse in 2001 after they failed to spot Enron's $20 billion in hidden debt, or 2013, when a PwC partner leaked confidential government tax laws to help multinational clients dodge taxes. The temptation to leverage their trusted positions is just immense. It's gotten so bad that by 2024, the UK actually forced the operational separation of audit and advisory branches just to try and stop the bleeding. We might actually be looking at imminent government antitrust breakups globally. Section 4, the coming corporate collapse. So as this golden era of cheap debt and unchecked prestige finally comes to an end, the absolute biggest immediate threat to the old model is technology. The traditional Big Four business model totally relied on billing clients for thousands of hours of manual document review and data extraction, mostly done by armies of expensive junior staff. But the new way? Artificial intelligence. One single experienced professional armed with AI can do the exact same work faster, cheaper, and frankly, a whole lot better. AI is rapidly dismantling the very barrier to entry that kept these monopolies so safe. And we're already seeing the cascading fallout. With the end of near-zero interest rates, billions in private equity dollars are suddenly trapped in aging funds because borrowing just isn't practically free anymore. Meanwhile, agile, AI-powered boutique consulting firms are rising up and grabbing market share, and corporations are bringing all that audit and data work completely in-house. But perhaps the most alarming hidden risk here is to everyday American retirement funds, which are deeply, deeply intertwined with these struggling private equity investments. So we've seen how a few untouchable titans completely consolidated power, leveraged cheap debt, and sold illusions at prestige to build these massive empires that touch literally every aspect of our lives. But now, with the rapid rise of AI and the end of cheap money, the foundation is completely crumbling. So I want to leave you with this powerful, lingering question to think about. Can the American economy actually survive the collapse of the very system that has quietly run it for 40 years? It's a fragile future, and the answer is going to affect every